Well, one of the things that's a principle of yours is transactions make a living, relationships make a fortune, and I was reading through some of the notes and looking at, some of the books you've written and stuff like that. And there's so many truths in what you've put out over the years, Todd. And I think that we're in a time now where there's a lot of events that talk about, social media and digital this and AI that, and, just the world's evolving, which there's no doubt that the world's evolving. But the principles that you wrote about in your books and what you've been teaching at Sales Mastery, to me, they seem timeless. And I'm curious, from your perspective, the laws of high trust selling, these principles were obviously written years ago, right? Back in the late 90s. How do you feel like they are relevant today, and will they continue to be relevant into the future? Or is there any that you're like, maybe we need to tweak that a little bit?
It's a great question. I had an interview about a year ago, and somebody asked me about the laws of high trust selling, which was actually written in 2002, released in 2003.
Okay.
And they asked me that same question, Tony, and they said, are all those laws still relevant today? And I go, 100%, absolutely, without question. And the response was, how can you be so confident? And I said, well, I wrote the laws to outlive me by at least 100 years. And they go, what are you talking about? And I go, no, I went all the way forward to what would it look like a century from now if these laws were still tested as to whether or not they would work in, a new millennium. And the guy goes, holy cow. But if you look at every single law in that book, every one of them is timeless, to your point, right? And the piece of the pie that to me will never, ever, ever go away is the power of relationships and the power of connection. And even in this idea of how deep do I go, and how do I rely on the connections that I make? I can have high touch and I can have high tech, but if I don't have high trust, none of those are leverageable. And neither one of those will replace a transactional value and lead you to a relationship. The relationship has nothing to do with marketing, and it has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with the heart-to-heart connection that human beings have. And people go, well, do you still use relationship as like your North Star? And I said, every single day. And one of the questions was, what's your most recent example? And I said this 2 days ago. I said, I landed in Sydney, Australia on June 11th, 2025, and I had 32 appointments with business leaders that I had never, ever met. And they go, well, how did you set those up? And I go, I didn't set them up. And they go, well, how did you get the appointments? And I go, I've got one guy in Australia that I have a very, very, very deep relationship with, and he believes in what we're doing. And so he contacted every one of these decision makers, and that's how the appointments got set. And now I have relationships with like the Zillow of Australia. Who would have ever thought that? I mean, I could have never called the CEO of that company called REA Group and set the appointment, but my friend that knows the person that knows the person that knows the person, and that's all it's about, Tony. It's about relationship integrity. It's about humanity first and everything else second. And when you combine humanity, empathy, and relationship, and you help people win, the technology and the touch supports that relationship. It does not replace the heartbeat of you and I having this conversation together.